Hello. Greetings to everyone watching this. I've been feeling a bit of an inkling in recent days that I should go ahead and make a video of some of my thoughts and maybe tell a bit of my story for those who haven't heard it yet. And for me to share where I'm at on my journey, some things that I've come to learn. And I'm nervous because I don't do this nearly often enough. And it's interesting because I have so many ideas and so much that I can share, and I'm good at it when I'm not on camera. I can write it down and articulate it and even talk about it to friends like in voice clips. But when it comes to turning a camera on myself and holding my camera here, I'm like, oh goodness. So yeah, it does change. It is an interesting dynamic. I'd have to say the last time I did a video was maybe 2022, sometime in 2022. So it's been a bit, but maybe I can start with that, how my journey has unfolded for me, the things that I have learned and experienced. I'll try not to use the phone as my I'll try not to use this device as a mirror, but again, I don't look into the mirror very often at all. Yeah, so the reality of doing this is so funny. But here, so where would I like to start? Here we are. I believe it's November 9th. It's Saturday the 9th. I could get up and check let me see what my phone says. Yep, November 9th. And here we are. We just had, quite a week. Many people are feeling really discouraged or overwhelmed or scared. And then others are feeling relieved and excited, and some haven't necessarily been very political at all, given that there was an election just days ago, and they might feel a little mixed feelings about things, or others still have more of an objective, or have been seeking to remain more neutral, to step back and not get really drawn into the energies and the commotion and divisiveness and things of the times and politics. It's very challenging for many. I can say for myself that I, in recent months, have done my best to I guess it's funny because my brain's like, you kind of avoided it all, and then it happened, and here we are. Elections come, they go. I did my best as an empath and a sensitive to just live my life and not get sucked into the polarity, the warring between each side of left versus right, and I just felt the best place for me to be was to remain more neutral or objective, and to try to look at things from like a bird's eye or a spiritual higher perspective, because we as human beings, it's interesting because we've had so many shifts lately. Everyone's going to be coming from a different vantage point, from a different understanding, from a different vibrational frequency, and so what I say might totally resonate with some and might not resonate at all for others. And so I keep pausing the video to regroup. I guess I need to start doing these more again, so this is good practice. We'll see if I end up sharing this clip and uploading it or not. Oh, I wish I had a tripod. That would be kind of neat, but then I guess I wouldn't know what to do with my hands and things. I'd probably have to have something to fiddle with in my hands to keep me busy. But yeah, we are in the midst of crazy times. I'm going to do my best to just think and to speak what's on my heart and to not focus on the camera or to get in my head. And speaking to that, I guess living life, we're taught what to think and what to believe so much that we often find ourselves. I think what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people are really struggling right now, and it's because of their perception of what's going on. They're really scared. They feel as though Trump winning the presidency again was really bad. They think that he is what a lot of the left-leaning medias have been portraying him as that, calling him like a fascist or comparing him to Hitler or saying that, they're pointing out every single flaw or thing that they can throw at him like it's a dartboard, and they're just attacking. And to be fair, he has a personality and a lot of mannerisms and a past that brings a lot into question, and he's not necessarily palatable or likable to many people. And many people would say, oh, this person's going to speak to that. Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. Especially the way I bring this across might make it sound as though I like the man or that I have faith in him or think he's a good candidate or a good president to have. I've never particularly liked him as a person, and I just knew he used to be on The Apprentice back in the day, and to me that's like he was like being an actor or playing a role, and any politician, any person that steps into a role of like a leadership role, they're going to be a puppet to the system and or the people that are running the show. It's so, even if he is in office, that doesn't necessarily mean, you know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily matter who gets in the office, because there are certain things in place and people running things behind the scenes, which we don't tend to see. And that is what's orchestrating certain other things. But more than that, I think the issue is that people are coming from, how to even address this? It's a tricky conversation. I've had friends converse with me recently about this, and a lot of them are really anxious and worried. They perceive him as just not a good guy, and they called him a fascist, and they're saying, what about, LGBTQ rights, or, what about the gays? Like, what about them? What about women's health rights? Saying he's getting old and that he's like, you know what I mean? Like that. And so, yeah, there's a lot about the man. He's not a perfect person. He's not, I don't particularly like him, if I'm going to be honest. But if we can get out of that, like that tunnel vision, and kind of step back and realize, okay, regardless of who, like I mentioned before, regardless of who, no one is perfect. I think if we want to think in idealized terms, anyone would want there to be people that you can feel like really good about voting for, if you're going to vote at all. And I was in a position where I don't trust the Kamala or her administration. I didn't, Biden's bowing out and then her being always just thrust in there because she was his vice president. I get that's how that works, but people were just like pushing it without it being even a popular vote thing. It wasn't even like that she was a candidate that the people chose or that originally started in the whole running. It was just, I don't know. And the way that they advocated for her, like, yes, she's the best, I don't know. it just felt very steered, like the narrative was very much steered, like, and then really rallied behind that. And I can just see that she means well and wants to make change and see the world be better, and wants to like make radical changes and do her what she thinks is her part. But what I'm also seeing is this fakeness, and when I've looked at Kamala, I've just felt she comes off as somebody who is genuine and really wanting to do good. And maybe there are parts of her that are, but I feel like I just sensed there's stuff not being said, there's insincerity, other agendas behind the scenes that are just not in the people's best and highest good. And it's interesting because in this modern time, I think it's more fashionable and more socially acceptable or encouraged, or to be left wing, to be progressive, to be like a modern forward thinker, especially when you're an educated person. I think the more education you have, the more likely it is that you will side with a left-wing perspective. That's just my take on it. And it's interesting to me because I'm what I'm coming to see, what my vantage point is saying. I think the more educated you are, you're certainly many people, brilliant brains, high IQs, more background in certain areas and expertise. We like to put these people, we like to put them on pedestals, or look at them as though they have some sort of right to like be like, oh, this person, is someone we should listen to or talk to. I don't know. I feel like I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I think the more educated people are, the more they've been indoctrinated into a certain way of thinking due to that education. And it's all conditioning. And what it is it's this form of conditioning which feeds off of and preys on our compassion and our empathy. We are able to look and see what has been done to people in the past, the wrongs that have been done, the mistakes made, or the wounding that has happened to certain groups, minorities, individuals. And we, in this day and age, like to champion those who've had those things taken place, and it's societally encouraged to support and champion the wounded or the wronged. And this comes from well-intentioned place, but I feel that there's errors in thinking, and there's some issues with that. If you're looking at someone like they're a wounded bird and treat them like they're a wounded bird, then there's some part of that that's gonna stick into the collective and individual psyche, like, I'm wounded, this, and it's like an entitlement. It's also sometimes can make people think that they can't break out of that they can't surpass or heal from, or transcend what's taken place in their lives, that they let that define them and keep them in a certain mentality or framework. And I don't necessarily think that that's healthy or helpful. And that's not to take anyone's traumas or experiences away, that they do indeed shape us and play a role into who we become. And the things we experience are designed to help us evolve. The issue I see is that certain groups, the left, and I can say that because I consider myself very moderate or apolitical. And to be fair, I am apolitical, But if you had to pigeonhole me, if I had to pigeonhole myself, I would say I'm very moderate. I'm very middle of the road. I have environmental concerns. I love the intention behind the Green Party. I don't necessarily like it in practice or some of the agendas or the ways they go about it, but I'm just absolutely passionate and unconditionally in love with Mother Earth and nature. So there's that, environmental concerns. But I would say I'm more of like a independent. I might have some alt-right leanings, meaning some leanings that are towards conservatism, but not that aren't necessarily a part of the right wing in general, the right wing as a whole. And there's certain parts of the left wing or left leaning things that I respect and appreciate. The rights for those who are homosexual, protecting that. Yeah. I have a very free-spirited, very gentle, very compassionate nature, and I think myself and many from my generation, millennials, and younger generations as well, I can speak to that because they're kind of in my age demographic, so I don't really want to speak. Of course, I can speak a lot to like different generations, but the ones that I'm most familiar with are ones that are closest to my age, and that's that we've been very conditioned to adopt these attitudes, perceptions, beliefs, and ways of acting and reacting and being that come along with being progressive and knowing about the wrongs of the past. Or if we don't want to look at it as so black and white, we can just say the things that have hurt others, that have like the abuse, the trauma the others have been through, the things that were just atrocious, like war, like racist stuff, slavery, the atrocious way that Native Americans, the indigenous of the United States, have been treated and were treated, stuff like that. We've been shown and taught in school and through music, entertainment, the media, societal pressures to respond to these social concerns and issues, real issues. Some from the past and some at present, which we may still see certain elements of from time to time. We've been shown a certain way and basically been educated or encouraged to react in certain ways and look at it in certain ways. And I like to look at that whole scope as the woke mentality. And it's only been this past, at least the past year and a half, that I've stepped out of that framework and way of looking at things. I listened to a podcast which is about self-awareness, spiritual awakening, psycho-spiritual approach to healing and growing and evolving. And the podcast was basically outlining how the far left way of looking at things is actually quite damaging and it's not accurate. And this isn't to, by the way, to advocate for or to endorse or to say that right wing is the correct way or the only way. I think really in life and anything, we should take what's good within anything. If there's good to be taken from something, take it and then leave what doesn't work and leave what's convoluted or twisted or corrupt or broken or unsustainable. Leave that behind, but take what works and what's good. And that's what I think. And I think the individuals that led the podcast that I'm speaking of, and many people who fall into that mindset or understanding, are recognizing that due to certain yeah, due to the way that things are with him, I don't know how to say it in a way that doesn't stumble. Yeah, due to the fact that the left wing has been co-opted, hijacked, with a lot of, some people could call it a mind virus. So other people could say it's Wetiko. The Native Americans called it Wetiko. Other people would say it's actual, like, legit manipulative brainwashing propaganda and tactics utilized with the intent to lead certain people to believe certain things, to lead them away from self-awareness and deeper healing and the core issues at hand. And it's so interesting because most people would be like, their ego would automatically then be triggered due to this programming and due to the nature of these mind viruses. They would be triggered and say, but hold on, I'm a social justice warrior. They're not going to say that, but they're going to feel like, I'm a social justice warrior. This is what's right. This is the ethical thing to do. And if you don't, you're a part of it or you're wrong. And that's like such an attacking energy. It's such a vitriolic, volatile, way of being, and I don't think that's healthy or necessary. And people don't realize that it's actually their ego, their wounded ego from inner, whether it's the mother wound or inner, or father wounding, any kind of inner child wounding that hasn't been healed or addressed. We then see wrong done to others and we want to rescue them, or we feel like it's then our job to police others and tell them how to live their life, how to look at things, how to behave, and how to be, and that's the appropriate way of being because it's endorsed by X, Y, and Z, these individuals. And to me, that's wrong because it's flawed thinking. And most people don't even explore it because it's so societally accepted and encouraged and embraced. And even I was somebody who was left-leaning for a few years. I grew up in a Christian household, so very conservative leanings. And my foster parents are very conservative and religious as well. And so I grew up with that kind of slant as well, because that was what I was taught and what was around me. And so I kind of followed that trajectory. And as I went to school, I started looking at things a little, and as I got older is when I started to expand and consider myself as more progressive and feel like that was a more inclusive, more open, more comfortable or likable perspective. And it kind of just abandoned some of those principles and things that I was taught to value. And it's interesting because we tend to like hop from one side or the other, right? Which is why I think I'm in a good space now, or anyone who chooses to kind of be more objective, more neutral, or apolitical altogether, or an independent party, like someone who's very moderate, I think, and is willing to admit or recognize that both sides are really quite imperfect in many ways, that neither side is completely right. But given where we are at as humanity and where the earth is going, given where we're at with the trajectory of the planet, the evolution of consciousness, the ascension cycle that we are in, the United States experiencing its first Pluto return, these things have an impact. And if you can bear with me, I am new to doing this. I haven't done this in a while, and so unless I start doing this more regularly, it's going to be a little touch and go at times, perhaps. Also, if my nose, I guess if you don't hear me speak a lot, or if you don't know me personally or don't know me well, you wouldn't know, but my nose is a little stuffed up, and I suffer from, or I grapple with, I don't like to say I suffer from something. I'd like to say that it's going to heal at some point, but it's histamine intolerance. Probably a year and a half at least. Almost spring will be 2 years that I've had histamine intolerance. And I got it after getting a I think it was triggered an immune reaction or immune condition that really formed and was triggered by a tetanus booster I got in March of 2023. Because within 3 days of that, I started having a really rough reaction to substances and things that I never had, like allergic or like histamine sensitivity to. I couldn't eat certain things. And to be fair, I think our bodies show us when we're doing too much of something, even if it seems harmless in some ways. If you're eating too much of a certain type of food that you enjoy, even if it's not entirely unhealthy, if you're doing too much of that, it can become unhealthy. And so I was eating too much chocolate and peanut butter, sweet treats, and just like, and the fact is, those are two of the highest histamine foods there are. And so my body just was unable to deal with the load of histamine in my body. And my gut went through some stuff, imbalance from having been on antibiotics a couple times. In 2021, I think I had a toenail removed. And so I went on antibiotics for like a couple weeks then. And then at some point in 2022, I think I had to go on antibiotics for another week. So that really messed up my microbiome. And so I've been healing that. So that's part of what I've been going through. So my nasal voice, unfortunately, that's what that is. But what's great is I had like a good 4 to 5 months this year where my symptoms subsided and I thought I healed it. Wishful thinking, perhaps, but yeah, I am hoping that with eating a little more healthily, avoiding as much processed food and food that has high histamine, antihistamine diet as a general rule, I'm hoping that it will heal in time. So what was I referring to before I got distracted by my nasally nose? I do have ADHD. I am on the autism spectrum, so these are things that affect me when I am doing videos and sharing. I get a little distracted at times, but most often it's pertinent to something going on, either A, within me and my body, or B, the topic at hand, hopefully. But we all get distracted at times, some more than others, let's be real. I may have to change where I'm sitting because this light's going to start blinding me in a minute. But yeah, what I've come to learn is that, because probably since May of 2023 onward. So yeah, it's been like a year and a half. Wow. It's exciting. A year and a half. I've begun doing some shadow work. I started looking at some things that previously had kept me stuck. I kept feeling, I'm gonna have to relocate. Where am I going? Ooh. Okay, focus. So, what was I saying? Yes, what I was saying was, in May 2023, I started realizing I needed to begin exploring shadow work and healing my inner child stuff and really begin working through my trauma, which up till that point I had always been too afraid of, and it triggered anxiety in me and a feeling of unsafety due to having complex post-traumatic stress disorder, C-PTSD, which is the form of PTSD that is caused by living in a situation or a home or environment that had long-term disruptions, imbalance, disharmony or dysfunction, and that causes a young person to develop a certain way, and it causes anxiety, and it also sometimes cause OCD, that sort of thing. But it's a condition that's not I was trying to zoom out on my camera for a second, but it looks like I can't do that from this mode. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder is it's the result of trauma, going through challenging things, difficult things. And when we're young, we're taught to repress this stuff. We are taught to, and this is actually going to tie totally back into the political thing that's going on, that we just went through the election. It's all going to tie back in together, and that's what's so wonderful, is how our journeys, if we are looking within and if we are on a conscious spiritual evolution trajectory, if we're looking within and looking to be conscious of ourselves, our wounds, our patterns, our own shadow, our hand in things, this is what affects how we perceive what's going on, whether or not we take responsibility and recognize we all have some direct or indirect hand in what we see playing out on the world stage, and being, whether we're conscious of it or not. And the fact some of us aren't conscious of the fact that we all play into the world stage, and because of that unconsciousness is what loops people so much into the mentalities that they get stuck in. And that unconsciousness is why we have so much shadow and people who are wounded and don't know how to heal it and how to address it. And so, yeah, since 2023, I started, I actually had someone I met online, and a certain interaction happened. And from that, I recognized that I have some inner child wounding that needed to be addressed. At like a bit of a situation where I was interested in somebody romantically, but vaguely. It's funny because, again, the person was like, hey, I'm only interested in maybe being friends, because it was like, it would have been an international thing. They're in another country. And so they were like, hey, let's maybe just be friends if you want. But still part of me was like, well, maybe if we get to know each other more, he'll change his mind. And so part of me couldn't help but hang on to that hope. There's certain conditions that we could bring up with that kind of mentality or behavior. Limerence is one of them, as well as codependency. And it's not necessarily healthy, but it can be a learned thing. We learn to accept, we learn to put up with and try to learn to put up with things we shouldn't. We learn to accept things we shouldn't, and seek love from those who aren't available emotionally, because it matches some wound or experience we have had in the past. Most commonly, some sort of abandonment or neglect wound from our parents. And this isn't to poo-poo on our parents, by the way, because our parents always do the very best they can with what information they have and from their level of understanding about how life works and how healed they are. And also depending upon how they were parented. And if they've got wounds, inner child wounds, then those remain unhealed until they're not. And so our parents, we got to understand that people always do the best they can with where they're at. And when we know better, we can do better. But for certain generations, I've come to see that it's much more challenging for them to come out of that mindset of that generation that they are from, like the Generation X, for example. Not X, forgive me. The boomer generation. My parents, I think, both fall into that. So, checking the time. Okay, I got a little bit more time. I can chat 20 some odd minutes. The boomer generation. They went through some stuff, and it's interesting because a lot of millennials can say, well, a lot of the economic issues and a lot of societal stuff we have going on right now that's really hurting us and making it so that we can't struggle to buy a house, and we are in so much debt, and we've got all this stuff going on is because of the errors that the boomers did. And you can understand each that people do play parts, and that does affect the generations after them, but we can't necessarily look at it as like, oh, the boomers are awful people and they're ignorant, like assholes, and they did X, Y, and Z, and now we're hurting and it's because they suck. That's simplifying and it's not entirely accurate. They went through a lot of trauma because they were born during a time where war had just happened. And in the years after that, there were more wars. Was it Vietnam War? And so Korean Wars. And so to live and to have parents that lived through like the Great Depression, or whose parents lived through it, you got to understand that this had certain mentality, certain consciousness, lack consciousness, a lot of fears and wounding that each generation can kind of move a little farther from, and ideally can heal from and transcend to some degree or other. But what doesn't get healed, what doesn't get addressed, what doesn't become conscious, what we aren't aware of within us, it will get passed on through our bloodline. And so what's really neat is what we are able to recognize within ourselves, what patterns, what wounds, complex post-traumatic stress being one, mother wound, father wound, any kind of neglect or abuse experience, some trauma you've been through in that way. It's our responsibility to heal it. And when we take on that as our responsibility, that's not to say we weren't a victim of abuse if we were abused, or that's not to say that we have to accept, psychologically, we have to accept that, okay, X, Y, or Z was abuse and we didn't deserve that. And so we need to let ourselves grieve that, to anger that, to feel that, to sit with that. And so in that way, you have to be like, I was a victim to this. But we can't stay there, and that needs to be a very brief place to stay. And I think it's very common in this modern day and age for people to look at it as, people that are narcissistic, or people that are abusive, or people that are addicts, or people that do, get involved into corruption, they're all awful people. We can point the finger, but what we're doing is we're projecting onto them. We're taking out our wounds onto them. And that doesn't mean that some of that what we're saying isn't highlighting an actual issue or a concern, but to point at somebody else and to blame them or to just tear them down, that doesn't rectify it, that doesn't fix it or address the issue at its core. And so things are a lot more complex, and there's more gray areas, I think, than what we see in politics today. And from doing my inner healing work, beginning my inner healing work and delving into shadow work, I strongly recommend Robert A. Johnson. He has a book called Owning Your Own Shadow. Very great introduction to the topic. That, and I recommend the Cosmic Matrix podcast on Spotify. And there's a website, veilofreality.com, I believe. Laura and Bernard, I consider myself almost like students of theirs. I'm not a part of their program. They have training they do, but just listening to their podcast is really, that was the one that I mentioned earlier in the video, that has taught me a lot. And so many people have been encouraged and taught socially, and thus conditioned and educated, and therefore indoctrinated. And again, these aren't judgments. This is the reality, because some of this applied to me as well until I recognized what was going on. We've been conditioned societally to look at certain things and to shame people who don't fall in line with these certain prescribed societal responses to social issues, and to say that you're complicit or you're a part of the problem if you don't have a certain mindset, and that's wrong. The issue is that there's so much wounding, and obviously we don't want to recreate situations from the past. We do want to learn from them, and so it's important to know about what's happened in our past, but not to retain that victim mentality, or that wounded consciousness, that or to have vitriol and feel like we are able then have the right to criticize, tear down, and judge and project onto others for all of the issues that are at play. The way that we heal it is by recognizing that we have wounding, that we're traumatized. We have individual wounding as human beings. You know, we have an inner child trauma. And then there's generational trauma, which can span, lifetimes, generations, as I've said. Then there's global trauma, right? We've had many, many things going on for a long time on this planet, and that are just not okay. They're not loving. They're not sustainable. They're not, and that those things need to cease in order for us to be a more safe, healthy, happy place to be residing. There's so much I could say. My video would go on forever if I get all these trains of thought that I could go down. So I don't know if it would be more helpful in the future if I have a bullet listed, whatever. I just like to do these generically, and sometimes they're to the point more, and other times they're a bit run-on-y. Apologies, I'm still figuring this out. But the issue is that too many people they want to blame and make somebody out to be a monster and project that people like Trump are garbage and that they are making the world worse. And that doesn't mean he's perfect or that he's without fault, without, that he's 100% a good guy. Just because I'm saying, in the grand scheme and knowing what I know about the grand design, what life's about, what's really going on behind the scenes, like who the people were that took over the planet thousands, if not millions of years ago, and why those groups are now losing control of the planet because of this ascension cycle, and how their corruption is now being exposed. We'll see it in the entertainment industry, and even aspects of the government are going to be implicated. We're seeing that with Sean Diddy Combs right now, P. Diddy. So much is going on right now, and it's all being exposed because we are going through this process of death and rebirth, recycling, of healing, and the Pluto return of the United States. It takes 248 years for a Pluto to start in one place and then to come around and then meet itself back where it started when the country was founded. And it's been that many years. And so we're experiencing the Pluto return, and that is revolution energy. And if you look back, when Rome fell, it was within, I think, 8 years of its second Pluto return. And I read some articles on this, and it was saying that when it had its first Pluto return, when Rome was only 248 years old, it went through a shakeup. It went through some tumultuous times then as well, but they were just not as to the extent that the nation fell. That it just dissolved. It dissolved. And so it's important to realize this, like, revolutionary type way of looking at things. That's the energy we see right now. So everything's coming up for our awareness, for our healing. And what I see in the people who know about this psycho-spiritual approach to healing, understand shadow work psychology, karma, astrology, spirituality, and what's really going on right now on the planet with the ascension cycle, this ascension process. The people that recognize, like, the players, like the negative controller groups who have been in control. When you know these things, you recognize the corruption when you see it, and you can point it out. I don't know if I want to get into that conversation so much today, but a lot of the elites, the royals, the governments, the richest people on the planet, certain groups have been in positions of unquestioned power for thousands of years, and they are involved closely into the corruption we see with the pedophilia and the sex trafficking and the abuse going on to the planet, because the planet is the connected directly with Divine Mother, the feminine. The earth is a feminine element, and the earth is being abused because her resources are being plundered, and certain weather manipulation is being done, and pollution plays a part. Also, the children are closely tied to Mother Earth because the children are innocent. They're love. They're light. They are pure. And Divine Mother and Mother Earth are closely tied to their what happens to the children. And it's come to my attention that millions of children are currently caught up in the trafficking and the abuse, the pedophilia that's taking place by those who've been in positions of control and power and influence, including the entertainment industry behind the scenes. There are secret societies. There are even religious groups. I will name one of them. The Vatican has been incorporated or has a hand in this. We'll see that when we see like the issues that have been risen over the years with the pedophilia that we've seen with priests in the Catholic Church, Catholicism. So yes, in a lot of secret societies and esoteric sects of certain religions have a secret satanic core. I'm smiling because of my inability to speak it clearly, not because of what I'm actually talking about. This is scary stuff. But a lot of this stuff is being revealed, and I'm here for it. I'm excited. And when you know about what's going on astrologically, when you know the cycles we're in, when you know the native indigenous, the Mayan prophecies, the Hopi prophecies of what's going on, you'll see it's really all coming together. And it's really truly wild to not only be like hearing about these as prophecies or things to come, but we're living it. And to see these solar flares, these solar mass ejections coming in and hitting the earth, with increasing our earth's solar plasma content. We're getting hit with all this solar plasma, and it is affecting us within like 1 to 3 days, usually within 2 days, I think, of a solar mass ejection. The flare, that energy will hit the earth, and sometimes more directly than others. And that's why we've had these aurora borealis incidents. And this is actually a part of what some spiritual groups call the great solar flash. And it was a predicted thing, because what it is the earth's frequency is raising, she is ascending, and this cosmic energy from the sun is just forcing high vibrational radiation, which is actually updating our DNA and helping the earth and humanity to ascend. And that's why we've got so much changing and shaking up right now. It's why it's been so tense, so intense. And that's why we're seeing stuff with the weather, with the solar flares, with the aurora. And none of the aurora borealis has been faked. It's not by HARP. It's because the sun radiation has increased because of where we are at in the ascension cycle. Everything is connected, astrologically, spiritually, energetically. It's all connected. And that's one of the lessons I've learned in life. I've taken a shamanic practitioner course back in 2019, intermediate course, and it was one of the most expansive, beautiful things I've ever done in my life. And it helped me recognize and connect with the spirits all around in all things. And it's much like what we see with the Disney movie Pocahontas, though it's more real and more palpable and more beautiful and than any Disney movie could try to articulate. But rocks, trees, and creatures do all have spirits and names, and we can know them. And I connected to my Norse ancestry. I met my shamanic Norse blood ancestor, Imelda, and she's my shamanic guide. And I would have never known about her had I not explored the shamanic path. And so it's something I don't do all the time, but here and there I'll do shamanic journeys for it's just another form of meditation. And I glean information from that, and it's really neat. My connection with nature has just blossomed and grown. And I'm really grateful that I took that course in 2019 before the pandemic kicked off, because it was like a way of really connecting with myself, with the universe, with nature, with God and spirit in general, in a really profound way before things really started unraveling. And when the pandemic happened, inside me, I remember watching the news reports about what was going on when the COVID was revealed to be going on the news. I felt this fear wave just catch me. I was like, this is serious. This is scary. But something just stopped me internally and said, this is not being portrayed truthfully. And so I just had this knowing, claircognizance. I'm very intuitive. I'm clairsentient. I'm an empath. I'm clairvoyant. I see things visually in my mind's eye. And I am sometimes clairaudient. I can hear frequencies and noises and such. And claircognizant, there's been a few times where I've just had some sense of knowing about something, and it drops in from a higher space. And that's claircognizance. And so, yeah, I had this knowing, this isn't being portrayed. This is not being, this COVID-19 is not being portrayed truthfully in the media. And so I did a meditation after that. I actually felt inclined to shut the lights out and light a candle and just like say a prayer and just see what would come through. And what came through was this violet flame light was showing through the light of the candle. And to me, that was the violet flame saying hello. And violet flame is very transmuting of density and negative energy and fear, and it can clear that and it can transmute that. And for me, that was just so exciting and reassuring. Like, I can call on that energy to transmute this fear. I am safe and protected, all is well. And it was just this really beautiful inner comfort. And since then, we've seen so much transform, and it's going to continue doing so because that's the trajectory we are on. So it's very exciting times. And the way I look at it is that because there's a lot of corruption and hidden covert agendas within the left wing, they're so easily hidden to look and sound like they are socially just, and that they are looking at things for the best good of all. They really use racism and social issues to manipulate people and to make you think that they make you think a certain way, and it's really actually damaging to what people. I can't speak to it very long because I have to get going here in a moment to run an errand, into my video is getting a little long. So all I can say is I highly recommend that you look into this a little deeper. It all stems from when we project onto others and see them as this monster completely, what we're doing is we are projecting our inner shadow onto them. Some part of anything we wouldn't accept within ourselves, and we project it onto somebody else. That's shadow projection. And what I've come to understand from reading the Shadow Workbook is that literally war is an outer manifestation of the collective unconscious. The more we become conscious of our patterns, our shadow, our less than positive or likable traits, the more we bring that conscious, the more we can recognize our behaviors and patterns and not let them rule us. And also we can become aware of certain strengths that we have that maybe we were taught were not okay, but when we were young, but then we can really use that as like fuel or some sort of empowerment when you're older, because not everything that we relegate to the shadow is wrong or bad. And so while it's very easy to get caught up in this mentality of good versus evil, or a black and white and right and wrong, when it comes to things politically right now, I think the people who are looking at this Trump win in a positive light, they're coming from a place of recognizing that the left does have a lot of corruption in it. I'm not saying the right's perfect or clean either necessarily, but it's the lesser of the two evils in the eyes of those of us who are looking at it in this way. And it's because of how many manipulations and how much brainwashing and conditioning and what have you are on the left side. So many agendas that are intent on keeping people separate from their meeting their divine counterpart, keeping people away from their inner masculine and feminine balance within, that are trying to prevent hieros gamos, sacred union within with the inner masculine, inner feminine, and to be able to connect with God through those energies and through that union within, or within a sacred union partnership. They want to keep people that are divine partners away from one another. And that's why there's been so much manipulation, actual sexual misery programming, brainwashing, and gender confusion, and just so much propaganda and stuff that's been put out over quite a number of years, to the point where most people don't even know, and they get really roped into it, and it affects them physiologically, biologically, hormonally, and emotionally. And so many people are traumatized right now because of it. And so I'm repeating what I've come to learn because I understand and I can see that it's true. I'm not an expert on it, so I highly recommend people would look into their shadow work and recognize that what we don't heal within ourselves, what's unconscious within ourselves, our unsavory habits or patterns or perceptions, we will then unconsciously project and blame on others. We will always blame somebody else, make them the victim, make them the baddie, the scapegoat, when really anything we're not conscious of, like thinking that addicts are gross or bad, or that hippies are dirty, or thinking that, thinking any one judgment, if we have a judgment that can limit others or that is harmful in some way, that's actually adding to the collective shadow. That's why we see war playing out, because there are people with certain agendas at play that want to keep us at war. Money is a big part of it. And then there's other secret agendas that they're not even telling people the mainstream about, but they're saying it's more religiously cultural stuff, when it's actually that potentially on the surface, but there's much more going on that they're not even telling people behind the surface. More galactic in nature, more spiritual in nature. This is very much a spiritual war, which is why people, when they were saying, oh, I don't want to vote for Trump because he's, we might have World War III if he gets in the presidency. I don't see that happening. What I see is there's already a spiritual war going on right now. It's a consciousness war. And if people aren't realizing that, to the mainstream, very basic level, the lower unconscious levels of operation are very 3D, 4D, fear-based, very manipulative, very lower vibration. Whereas when you're more based in love and spiritual concepts and unity and compassion and understanding, you're more able to be objective and hold a 0 point and neutrality and see things from a higher perspective and understand or understand that it's not so simple, and you won't be as easily roped into this versus them, black versus white. You won't allow that mind control virus that to grab you and to suck you into being this, but this person did all these things wrong. This is why they're not a good candidate. When really, every person can be used by the divine. Every person can be used by God for the good, even if on the surface they don't look like a good person, and even if they're not a perfect, all-around lovable, likable person. Anyone can be used for the good. Any person can, and that's what many of the spiritual perspective that I'm learning about, or that I am a part of, both, that's the perspective we hold, is that's the lesser evil here. And many people aren't going to understand. They're going to be so triggered because this leftist mentality is very tied into our, like I've said once or twice already before, it's very tied into our our wounding and our traumas, and that's what hooks you in. It makes you feel like it's, again, something I can't discuss and really elaborate upon and bring it about in such a way that you would understand fully within the amount of time I have left. But it preys upon our tenderheartedness, our compassion, and our empathy, and it preys on our wounds. Anything that's not healed within you is ammo for the other side. I don't want to say the other side. Let me reframe that. It's ammo for those who are wanting to use those wounds as triggers. They want to use that against you and manipulate you. So the more you can become conscious of, oh, hey, I have a wounding there. Oh, hey, that's a codependent pattern. Oh, hey, that's a rejection wound or abandonment trauma. Anywhere you can come to understand who you are psychologically and emotionally, and begin healing and reparenting yourself and giving yourself that love and nurture, the more you can attract healthy, loving relationships, the more you can't be manipulated by external means, and the more clearly you're going to see things, because you're not going to be projecting from that inner wounded place and feeling validated, like that you have the authority, or that you can then go and project that and blame an entire gender for what has happened due to societal patriarchal ideology. The left would then like to blame men in general, when men have been just as wounded, and society has wounded men and left them with women very, very hateful against them because of all of what's happened to the feminine, when really the masculine and feminine have both equally energetically been wounded. And I don't know if I would say equally, but in different ways. The feminine is rising, but so too is the masculine, and we need a healed masculine to be able to support and protect and honor and cherish the feminine. And if we aren't respecting masculinity and what it can be, just because so few men and fathers have been there for their children and for their women, we think that means that all men are pigs, and that's not it. That's the virus, the mind virus. We need to understand that it's wounding and unconsciousness that causes this patterning and these perceptions. The more you can come to understand the truth, you will no longer project. You will no longer blame. You will take your responsibility, and you can then begin to unravel and help make the light more conscious. Carl Jung said, we don't become conscious by imagining figures of light. It's by making the darkness conscious. And that's what's happening on a grand scale. Everything collectively is kind of coming to a head, and we're being asked to individually do our part so that we can help make the whole more bright. So hold your ground. Try to be neutral and to be in your heart. We're entering a more heart-centered space in this space and time. Our hearts are opening and healing. Gaia is opening and healing. Our connection to Mother Earth is deepening because of the frequency rising of the planet. Things are going to become more like an Eden-like place. Our connection with the elementals, the fairies, the dragons, the mermaids, all these beings that we've been taught are fairy tale, are not real, are indeed real, and they are multidimensional, etheric beings like the Fae. And it's all coming back online because of the fact that the frequency of the planet is rising, and we are returning to those levels of consciousness, and that connection with the Earth's connection with these things, and our symbiosis with the Earth. We are then able to connect more with the fairies and the elemental realms, the dragons, and we're all here to help each other. We're all a part of this grand unfoldment, this journey of expansion, evolution, and consciousness. So many people aren't even aware that we are spirits having human experiences, that we are here to learn from what we've been through, that what happens to us isn't happening to you. You're not being punished by life. And even if you have karma from a past life, even if you go through a lot, you might just be going through a lot in this lifetime because you may have a big purpose. You may have a lot to heal and grow and experience for the soul trajectory to get you to where you're meant to be. But we are able to, if we allow ourselves to see that everything happens for us and that the divine has always been there. It's been covered up by many manipulations, misconceptions, corruption, and lies and deceit over the years. So religion has not always got it right. There's certain distortions there for sure. And I think that's going to be brought to light in the coming years as well, because we are in the Aquarian age, and certain older, outmoded ways of thinking and looking at things are just falling away. The corruption as well within the elites and within certain organizations, and some of the organized religion corruption is going to be exposed as well. And so I usually don't do a video this long, and if you've stayed with me, thank you for understanding that, it's not always easy for those of us sensitives to talk on these topics in such a way that you just can spit it out in a nutshell. Maybe in time I'll be able to do more nutshell type videos, little quick blips and things. I think the more I practice doing this, the better. Because I do, as a Blu-ray starseed, I'm a Blu-ray starseed. I'm very connected. I'm here connected with Mother Earth and Divine Mother. Blu-rays are here on a specific starseed mission to help usher in the new age, the new Earth, the new Aurora Earth. We're here for Divine Mother, the Divine Feminine Rising, and we are part of that. We embody that light and that energy, and the blue color is what connects us with Divine Mother. And so yeah, what's very, very interesting, as souls, we all embody light, and we all have a mixture of different rays of light, but some of us embody a majority of a certain light, and that actually has relevance to your soul path and your journey and why you're here. And I am a Blu-ray, but I also have some rainbow child or rainbow ray aspects as well, because I have had many lifetimes and incarnations as a elemental being or fairy. I also know I have angelic heritage, and some incarnation or experience I have lived as an angel. This is what I've come to learn. It's crazy. It does sound crazy, but it resonates as well, because we've been here. This world is billions of years old, and us old souls, we've been here and we've experienced far more than just this one life. And we have far more than just this one life. You don't have to agree with that if you don't resonate or don't believe in it, but I have come to learn that over the years. And I will elaborate a little bit more on my journey, how I've gotten to where I am, and the process. But I think I've actually touched on quite a bit within a little over an hour here. So thank you for listening. I hope some of that made sense. I encourage you to read, if you haven't begun your shadow work journey yet, and if you feel called, I encourage you to look into Robert Johnson's work. He is a Jungian analyst, and he speaks on the psychological work and theory of Carl Jung, and the shadow work and map of the soul, all of that kind of groundbreaking work that Carl Jung was responsible for. I love that guy. He was an INFJ just like me. So I just get really excited about anything psychology. But also I'm a healer. I'm here as a, see what time it is? 3:40. I might not make it to the recycling center if I keep chatting. This is what it is. I am here as a starseed. I am here as a healer. I am here as a speaker, as a singer, as a way shower, as a creative. I have an artist's soul, but I'm more of a writer and a speaker, and an intuitive, in my opinion, than I am like a visual artist. But I love all art. It speaks to me deeply. I have a small business, Soul's Journey Reiki and Intuitive Arts, and that may change form, or the way I go about it or what I offer may change in time, but at this time it's my business, and I started it in 2016. I am a Reiki master teacher. I am a Reiki practitioner, of course, and I teach people to use Reiki healing. I offer healing sessions. I offer something unique called intuitive painting readings, where I use my intuitive knowing. I read your energy and I will give you a personal painting with the symbols that I receive. And it will give you insights as to your energy and anything pertinent from your guides or my guides with regards to your journey and where you're at. And they're all very, very cool and incredibly unique. And yeah, I have a website as well. I think it's like Soul's Journey. Oh goodness, I couldn't tell you at the moment. It's a Wix site. But if you look at my Facebook and my Instagram, the link to the webpage is there. Then you can contact me through Instagram and Facebook. I also have a YouTube channel. It is Blu-ray Priestess 823. I might change the name, not sure. I really just love the priestess idea because it's somebody who does alchemy. It's somebody who's doing inner work and is devoted to their spiritual path of healing and embodying who they are and in support of the divine, and that's a priestess. And so I'm not claiming to be like some authority or anything, but I just love the name Blu-ray Priestess. So yeah, that's that for now. Please take good care of yourself at this time. Recognize there is a greater plan unfolding. There is a higher timeline, and what I believe is that those of us who are aligned with this higher frequency, this higher knowing, are indeed already on that higher timeline. And the only people who aren't are those who are mired in fear or living a very low vibrational reality or frequency, or who are a vibrational match to the lower timeline. But yeah, we've just recently had a shift earlier in October. And we just had, I believe we might have had another one since the election. So some have said, I haven't determined that yet. But goodness, it's crazy to be alive and experiencing this shift that's been foretold for thousands of years. The energies increasing and amplifying. Those of us who are in tune with our bodies and our energy fields can feel it. My chakras today, I was just noticing yesterday I felt my third eye, my throat area was doing some movement or opening. I could feel it in my crown, and I think today I might have even felt it as well. Several of my chakra centers, some of the higher ones from throat up were opening and are activating. So it's happening. Right now my ears are ringing quite a bit. They've been ringing all day. There's many symptoms that we experience. Lightheadedness, dizziness, feeling like you're going to pass out, migraine, nausea, difficulty sleeping, exhaustion, emotional sensitivity. Let's see what else. Yeah, just feeling very almost like I've been feeling kind of like sort of detached from my body. I think it's because I have trauma and stuff from my past that I still need to probably work through. And we're raising in frequency, so it's sometimes it's like we're kind of stuck between vibrational realities, or maybe that's not what I'm talking about at all. Like I've just noticed feeling kind of tingly or numbness and just feeling almost kind of disconnected from my body. So I don't know if that's me tapping into some of the collective dissociation and trauma that a lot of us have been going through because of the election and everything, where I feel like I had a relatively, like I felt very emotionally vulnerable and overwhelmed energetically around that time of the election, but I wasn't concerned because I knew whoever would win, that it would be what we need to, and it would bring about whatever circumstances. My right ear is ringing so loud right now. Whoa. That it would bring about the circumstances necessary. I knew whatever it would be, whether Kamala or Trump won, I knew it would be the catalyst. And to be honest, it makes sense that somebody who's so unliked in so many regards has very strong opinions and very views and things that so many people find distasteful or unpalatable, that he is definitely acting as a trigger, as a catalyst for many people to realize, hey, it's waking them up, it's shaking them up, and it's I guess it's really necessary, you know? So have faith as much as you can. Learn to develop and strengthen your connection with God's source, because the more you're able to do that in these times, the more you're not going to be thrust about, shaken about, and feel completely untethered from your body and unable to cope. And there are times where it doesn't matter how spiritually connected you are and how aware you are, you're going to feel a little untethered or ungrounded or a little uncomfortable, because this isn't a very uncomfortable time. But everything is happening on time. Everything is in divine order, and the more we align with love and embody peace and just picture the world we desire to experience, and the more we get in tune with who we are as a soul and what we're here to do, and heal any blocks, wounding, integrate our shadow, recognize that we're not just all love and light. We all have some measure of shadow to us, and that's just what makes us more human, and that's part of what we're here to work with. And it's not bad, it just is. And there's a collective unconscious that people have repressed and like to just dip into, and it kind of it makes things a mess sometimes, doesn't it? You know what, I'm not going to make it to the recycling center, so I might be able to continue talking for a little bit longer. I just didn't get going in time. The recycling center closes at 3:50 and it is like 2 minutes away. So there's my sign. Not going this weekend. I'll have to wait till Wednesday. So it is 1:11 right now. Look at that. I saw 11:11 this morning. First time I looked at the clock coming out of my room. I think it was 11, and then 1:11 I just saw, and so now it's 1:11 on my timer here. So that's pretty cool. So yes, yeah, I think I've encompassed quite a lot. If you actually stuck around with me, I'm really excited that you were willing to hear what I had to say. I hope it made sense. I could probably leave some links in whatever, description video. If I leave this on my Instagram, my YouTube, I can leave some links to books or content that I think you would find supportive for shadow work, for podcasts, for emotional healing. The more we do our inner healing and recognize our own shadow, the more we can recognize that demonizing, that propensity or the tendency to project our anger and our wounds onto others and blame them, we realize that's something in us that needs healing, that's calling out for healing. So yes, I encourage you all to begin your shadow work journey if you feel so called, or if your shadow has been surfacing in uncomfortable and embarrassing or unsettling ways. That's what happened with me. A situation happened where I was just realizing, like, oh, that was my shadow cropping out. That was awkward, and that was a little uncomfortable, and I don't really want that to happen again. And the more we're aware of these parts of ourselves, the less they're going to burst out in like have outbursts, or the least likely they are going to wreak havoc in our lives in some way. We need to allow them to have space to breathe, or we need to at least be aware that they exist, so we can either integrate them into our lives in a healthy way, or to allow them to have some kind of voice. We find somewhere sort of ceremony or ritual way to acknowledge these parts, and so that we can kind of satiate them and have them not having too much power over us. It's crazy. Doesn't it sound crazy? But that's what I've been learning about through the shadow work journey. In addition to owning your own shadow, this is probably the last bit I'm going to share before I sign off for today. In addition to Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert Johnson, I checked out a couple other shadow work related books, or books on the topic. One of them was Existential Kink. Actually really, really intriguing, very cool book. Yeah, I recommend it for those who feel so called. I listened to it on audiobook. It basically points out the fact that some of us unconsciously like certain negative habits, negative, undesirable, parts of us that we wouldn't necessarily like tell people about or share openly or honestly when we meet someone, or that we hide from ourselves. Sometimes we actually like certain things we feel embarrassed about or negative about, or which have more power over us than we'd like. There's some level of pleasure that we derive. So, and it could be actual like sexual pleasure, or it could be just you get some kind of kick out of it and you may not even be aware of it. And I think some people, for instance, it could be anything. Some people want to have power over others. Some people want to be babied and to be supported by somebody else and to not take responsibility because they didn't have enough of that as a child. And so they kind of need to like indulge that part of them that just needs to be taken care of for a little bit. Even though they're a full-grown adult, and most people would say, that's not being responsible, that's awful, that's wrong. If that part of their shadow is needing that, you got to find some way of giving it what it needs, or it's going to probably burst out, and it can cause all kinds of havoc. And a lot of people will try to be a certain person in a relationship or societally to be like this acceptable person, you know, like I'm trying to tighten my bow tie. I don't have two hands, so it doesn't work. But they try to appear a certain way on the surface, or their relationships. But if you're not fully allowing another part of you, an actual part of you, to breathe and live and speak and have a life and to be, it could burst out on you, and in that could manifest as like a midlife crisis or an affair or some gambling addiction or other addiction or some sort of awful thing. And so that's why knowing yourself, knowing your shadow aspects is very important, and it's actually very empowering too. It can sound scary when you're not ready, but I don't know. I feel something has shifted. We've shifted timelines a few times, or it's just because I've become ready. I've been ready for the past year and a half. I've really begun digging into it, because before, anytime I talked about anything to do with like past trauma or childhood trauma, it would just make me feel like this low-level anxiety, and I would want to avoid it and ignore it at all costs. But now I realize that, it's not necessarily just sitting there staring at our trauma and saying that it's there. It's a matter of, okay, what's the wound? Where did it come from? And how can I nurture that wound? Acknowledge that it's there, and give myself love. And if I need to feel through it, that's often how we gotta do it. It's not always something like, I'm gonna think about my trauma today and make it go away. It's not that. We've actually got to do somatic therapy, allow ourselves to scream it out, punch it out, have like a rage therapy where you hit something like the ground with a stick, or punch a pillow, or do certain like yin yoga or exercises that allow you to work through it. And it'll come up in life. And so when you're ready and when it needs to come up, whether it's your shadow or your wounding, it'll come up. And the Cosmic Matrix podcast has been a really wonderful resource for me. The books that I mentioned, I'll mention also another book on complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and that was called C-PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, by Pete Walker. He also had a book. It's not a sequel, but you could consider it that, and that it's of the same general topic, but it's about allowing yourself to really feel through feelings that you were taught were not okay to feel, or a lot of people that were in less than healthy or harmonious homes or dysfunctional homes. You were probably taught that certain things were not as desirable, or that you wouldn't receive the love or validation or acceptance if you acted a certain way. So certain emotions you were taught to repress or hide, or you were trying to be a certain person so that you would be loved or accepted. It's crazy to say it out loud, but it's the reality is we believe some of these things, and sometimes we're literally taught these things, mostly by parents who are also wounded and they don't know they're doing it. So wounded people hurt others. The wounded wound others, and it passes along until we become conscious of it, we become aware of it, and then we can address the core of it with compassion and understanding. So the book that I didn't tell you the name of, the second book, is by Pete Walker. It's The Tao of Fully Feeling, and it's actually equally powerful, if not even more powerful than the other one, C-PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving. Those were wonderful books on my healing journey. I read those last year. Yep. I think I started reading them last year, but I might have finished them earlier this year, spring into early summer. I also read the memoir by Matthew Perry, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. And he talks about his addiction and how he struggled with that. And I just thought that was extremely eye-opening because having read or listened to the audiobooks about C-PTSD and how our wounding can lead us to develop coping mechanisms to numb out or to deal with the pain of trauma and neglect. The addiction is what can form from that trauma. And it's just so sad what he went through, but I love how open and honest he was about everything. And in the end, he was doing his best to try to help others. And it sounds as though it sounds like he had people around him that weren't necessarily being the steadfast help that he needed. They were getting him drugs, and either A, because he asked, or B, because they were somehow not saying no, or maybe even be that they offered it to him. It could be some Illuminati shit for all we know. So no, that's the first time I've mentioned that, but I did mention secret societies, and indeed they do in fact exist. So yeah, he was trying to speak out about that in the end, and he had some really cryptic, strange posts on his Instagram, which to me were indirectly stating that he wanted to speak out about the wrongs going on, the corruption. Like he knew, he kind of alluded to wanting to be like Batman and how much he resonated with Batman. And he's like, if you were in trouble, who would you call? You'd call Batman. And he's like, I'm Matman. You can call on me if you need help. It was like he was just identifying with that, but I think he also wanted to speak out against corruption and be that hero person. But it seems as though he was in a position where he couldn't. And before he could speak out, if he was intending to speak out about some of the corruption, he lost his life. And that happened with Paul Walker. And that happened with Marilyn Monroe, JFK. Anyone who speaks up about corruption and who speaks the truth and makes a big way for people inspirationally, like Martin Luther King, a lot of these brilliant people, John Lennon, were done away with. I believe the CIA did away with John Lennon. And actually, that's what happened with JFK and with Marilyn, because they knew about what was going on within the CIA, and they were going to speak out about it. And somebody found out, and so they did away with Marilyn, and then shortly later, they did away with JFK. So, and a lot of this, again, JFK knew, what Marilyn knew was about the corruption in the CIA, and JFK wanted to expose it. And so she wanted to blow the lid off of it herself, but she was killed first, and then JFK was really upset because he loved and or was involved with Marilyn. And so yeah, so many people have wanted to speak out and have spoken up for truth, for peace, for making good change, have spoken against the status quo, the media, and yet it's done such a good job of keeping people in line and keeping them believing certain narratives and what have you. So I'm just really excited to see that humanity and the earth are coming to this place where the truth is being exposed. It's being brought to light, and that people are awakening up to what's been taking place for so very long. We'll have a lot of healing we need to do, both individually and collectively. So part of what I'm here to do is to help way show and provide support, insight, direction, encouragement with regards to what someone's spiritual purpose is and what their path is, and I can provide insight in that regard. So I just love that that's what I'm here to do, to speak my truth, to share what I know, to use my gifts and my intuitive knowing to guide people along their way, to develop their intuitive knowing so that they can use their own internal compass and know that what their path is and what their purpose is, and connect directly with God, because that is what I want to teach people that they can do and that they are behooved to do. And it's going to be more and more important in these times because, yeah, I think people are more and more becoming disillusioned to the corruption within the media and so on and so forth. And that's exciting as well. And the one of the things RFK Jr., last thing I'm going to say, it's the second or third time I've said that, right? RFK Jr. is talking about exposing, not exposing, he's planning on doing away with a lot of like health like FDA issues and the food in this country, and the issues with what I call the sick care system. It's been designed to really keep people sick and from being their healthiest self. And I think it's really great. For one, that's a win that he is speaking out against it. It's interesting because so many people are so indoctrinated and don't realize fluoride calcifies the pineal gland. This is a poison on the back of your toothpaste. It says if you ingest this, contact a poison control. You say, oh, well, it's safe because it's put in toothpaste, and dentists say that it helps blah, blah, blah with my teeth and my enamel. It's a poison, and it may harden the surface of your teeth, but it also is a toxin. If you ingest, you are not only ingesting something that's not safe for you to swallow, but it also calcifies that the substance of fluoride calcifies your pineal gland and makes it so that you are not as open and aware and connected to your spiritual faculties. And so people, it's crazy, but it's legit. And so I'm really encouraged by the by RFK Jr. and some of his intentions with what he's going to do. He's teaming up with Trump, and so you gotta understand, maybe Trump is a wild card and he's being used by the divine in such a way that he is helping bring to light what needs fixing and which isn't sustainable. And take the good and recognize there's always going to be some negative or uncomfortable or bad along with it. No one's perfect. So I, for one, have faith and hope, and I'm seeing that there is indeed hope. It's not always black and white. It's not always what it appears to be on the surface, and everything is in fact in divine plan, in divine. Yeah, it's in the hands of the divine. And so I also encourage you to check into Earthstar Academy on YouTube, Instagram. Her videos on the topic, I've shared them on my Facebook page. She's just a wonderful resource. And I plan to eventually join her membership program to join Earthstar Academy. She's working on doing earth grid work, healing and also establishing aurora hubs and healing centers for the new aurora earth, the new earth that is being brought into form. And so I want to support her and be a part of these grid work ceremonies that are helping heal the earth, and this energetic grid that surrounds the earth has been polluted and really harmed by negative forces intent on keeping our consciousness at a negative level. So it's really wonderful. I really recommend her. She's lovely. She does live streams and shares a lot of wonderful content. And I highly recommend her. Z with Earthstar Academy. I'm going to wrap it up now. Thanks for listening. If you did happen to listen, that's quite an attention span you have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Definitely look into those things that I've passed along with you. I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, you can ask. I do not want to get into any debates with anybody. It's okay if you don't have a view that, you know, resonates with what I've shared, but at least do some research. Do try on a new way of thinking. Allow yourself to question what you currently hold as a belief, because if you're willing to do that, then you might find the truth that you need to see. And if you don't find any truth, then go about doing things the way you are. You know what I mean? That's how I went and started my journey. I asked that God would show me what the truth was, show me my path, and I would do it. And that was my journey as it was starting. 2011, 2012 timeframe. From then on, I experienced my spiritual awakening, and I've been growing and remembering and reconnecting with parts of my inner self, and learning and growing ever since. So thank you very much for hanging out, for listening. Take care of yourselves right now. Grounding, hydration, very important with these solar flares. Spend time in nature and unplug as much as you can. Do what brings your heart joy, happiness. And if you would like an intuitive painting reading, please reach out to me. I charge $77 for those. They take usually an hour and a half to 2 hours to paint, and then it usually takes an hour and a half to do the interpretation, the write-up. So, and they're really quite amazing. And let me know if you live in Maine and you would like some Reiki training. I don't charge an arm and a leg, and I teach you what you need to learn. And it's always really fun, encouraging, uplifting, empowering time. It's probably one of my, apart from my paintings, it's probably my favorite to teach Reiki. I also offer oracle card readings and spiritual direction for anyone who is wanting to suss out where they're at on their journey, what their path is, what their purpose is, or just want to explore, you know, what is my path? What am I here to do? Just needing some direction with regards to spirituality, then I can provide some insight. So thanks so much for listening. It's been fun. I'm going to try to do more of this, and hopefully I'll develop a little more of a regular rhythm, and it's been fun. So blessings to you all. Take care. Sending you love. Bye-bye for now.